Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of 1025. Yeah, I know I'm a little bit dressed up today, but it's because recently somebody pointed me to a YouTube channel called SGN, or Some Good News. It's hosted by actor and comedian John Krasinski, and maybe you might know his face because he played Jim Halpert from The Office. Well, anyways, in the midst of all of these COVID-19 concerns and a lot of the negative news that's being broadcast to the world, what John Krasinski has chosen to do is from his own home, from his desk, almost like a news anchor, he dons the coat and the tie, and his kids have made a sign called SGN, and he just plasters that on the wall behind him just like I do this morning. And then week after week, he shares stories of some good news, stories of human resilience. Recently, those stories have included a parade that was held in California for a 15-year-old girl who was a cancer survivor. As she was leaving the hospital, all of these vehicles lined the streets, rolled down their windows, kept their social distance, and yet applauded for her as she returned home. Stories like a man whose wife has Alzheimer's and is in a care facility, and every day he shows up, and together they sing Amazing Grace. Recently, it was a story, we've heard about all of these people who are coming down with COVID and who are in the ICU. Well, he showed video footage of people who were leaving the ICU, people who were leaving the hospital, and the parade and the applause that accompanied that. And it was inspiring. Or because sports is supposed to be starting up, he talked about creative quarantine sports and showed different people and how they were coping with COVID and the lack of sports at this time. It's a great show. It's about 15 minutes long, and I'm gonna share the link with you because I'd love for you to check it out. And at the end of every show, he says, in a world that is dark, everybody needs some good news. Think about that. In a world that's dark, everybody needs some good news. Isn't that the essence of our Christian faith? In a world that's dark, in a world that is pulsing with sin and Satan's reign, there's still good news. And you know what we call that as Christians? Some good news. Actually, the word for good news is the word gospel. And Jesus, after his resurrection, in Mark chapter 16, verse 15, says this to his disciples. I want you to go into all creation, into all the world, and do what? And share some good news. Not just some good news, but the good news, the gospel. And what is the gospel? The gospel is that Jesus is alive, that the body that was bathed in blood and then buried in a tomb after a horrendous death on the cross. Talk about some negative news. That same body came back to life, walked out of the tomb, and is alive to this day. And because of that, we know that death has been defeated, that sin has been forgiven, that Satan has been put in his place. This is the good news that our world needs to hear right now. And I was thinking about this. In order for there to be some good news, it actually necessitates that there's bad news. The gospel necessitates that we first recognize that there's bad news around us. And so we're put in a position right now in our world where there's a lot of bad news, where there's a lot of negative news that's out there. And so, church, this is our time to step up. This is our opportunity to share some good news. And the good news of the gospel is that nothing can keep us down. No sin, no period of grief, no collapsing economy, no amount of social distancing, no stay-at-home orders, none of that. No disease called COVID-19. None of that can keep us down because nothing could keep Jesus in the grave. And so the gospel is about human resilience. It's about restoring relationships. It's about bringing a little piece of eternity here on earth as it is in heaven. That's what the resurrection is all about. It's not just about saying, hey, things are going to get better after you die and go to heaven. No, it's about saying that same power that raised Jesus from the dead, that same spirit lives in us and enables us to be resilient. It's some of that same news that John Krasinski shares each week on his show. So, what do we do with the good news? We just share it. That's what John Krasinski does each week. Each week from his office, he shares story after story of good news. And people are listening. He's got 3 episodes out. And the first one has like 15 million listens, hundreds of thousands of likes, and many more people have shared it. This is what we do. We share the good news. And in the same way, this is what I'm doing day after day. I'm coming to you with some good news, with a word of encouragement for you. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for listening. We've got hundreds, even sometimes up to 1,000 views for each episode that I'm putting out. That's incredible. You're listening. And you're liking it, and you're sharing it. And I want to thank you for that. This is what we do as a church. Because in a world that's dark, everybody needs some good news. So share that today, and I'll see you again tomorrow.